Dante Moreno checked his security cameras at his upscale Italian restaurant on a humid August night and saw the thin woman in borrowed clothes sitting at the bar with his missing son's hand in hers. What he saw made him cry, tears streaming down his face as he watched her shield the boy with the kind of gentleness that had died with his first child years ago. The air hung thick enough to taste, sticky heat pressing against the windows while distant thunder rolled across Los Angeles like a warning. 11:47 at night. Dante stood alone in his private office above the restaurant, the blue glow of 6 security monitors washing over his face like a death sentence. The hum of the air conditioning failed to cut the humidity. His white shirt clung to his shoulders. The taste of expensive whiskey, gone warm in his glass, burned the back of his throat. He cycled through the camera feeds out of habit. Dining room empty. Kitchen staff cleaning stainless steel counters. Back alley clear. Then he froze on camera 3. The bar. A woman he had never seen before sat on the second stool from the left. She wore clothes clearly 2 sizes too large, a waitress uniform, borrowed and falling from her shoulders. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy knot, wisps escaping around a face that looked like it had forgotten how to rest. But it was the child beside her that stopped his heart completely. 7 years old. Dark curls. The Superman t-shirt Dante had bought 6 months ago before Noah vanished from the downtown shelter where street children disappeared into the system like ghosts. The boy's small hand wrapped entirely in hers. Dante's fingers went white on the desk edge. He leaned closer to the screen. The woman was speaking to Noah quietly, her lips moving with words he could not hear through the monitor's silence, but her body language screamed protection. She was angled between the boy and the rest of the room. One hand on his shoulder. The other gesturing as she told him something that made him almost smile. Almost. Then she did something that broke Dante completely. She took a napkin, dipped it in her water glass, and gently wiped Noah's face with the tenderness of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Someone who had cared when no one was watching. Someone who had loved without being asked, without being thanked, without expecting anything back. The first tear cut down Dante's cheek before he realized he was crying. In the 15 years since his daughter died at 3 days old, since he sealed that nursery and swore he would never speak her name again, he had not wept. Not once. Not when his wife left him. Not when his mother called him a monster. Not when he buried men and ordered their families buried with them. But watching this stranger with his lost son, watching her pour gentleness into a child the system forgot, watching her be what he could not, his vision blurred and his shoulders shook and he gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. His breath came in a sharp gasp. On the monitor, Valentina laughed at something Noah said. Her whole face transformed despite the exhaustion carved into every line. Despite the fading bruise on her left temple, barely hidden by her hair. She pulled a worn prayer card from her pocket, the only thing she had left from before the fire, and showed it to Noah. Their heads bent together in the blue-tinted security footage. Saint Catherine. Protector of the abandoned. Guardian of the lost. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Tony, his lieutenant for 12 years, froze in the threshold. His face went slack. In 12 years working for Dante Moreno, he had never seen this. The most dangerous man in Los Angeles, the man who had ordered the dismantling of 3 rival families, the man whose name made federal agents weep into their whiskey, bent over his desk, tears streaming, staring at a screen like it held the only thing in the world that mattered. Tony stepped backward slowly. He closed the door without a sound. What Valentina Santos did not know as she sat at that restaurant bar with $17 left to her name and nowhere to go, was that the man watching her through those cameras had just made a decision. A decision that would burn through the city like wildfire. A decision that would set every violent hand in Los Angeles moving. And the 2 people hunting her across the city, Anthony Marchetti with his corrupt police connections, and Catherine Mercer with her social media reach and photographs of Valentina's shame, were about to make the fatal mistake of threatening someone Dante Moreno had already claimed as his own. The camera feed showed Noah reach up and touch Valentina's face. His small hand against her cheekbone. Dante did not move. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you do not miss what comes tomorrow. Now let us go back to the beginning, to 3 years of invisible labor and one Thursday night that turned Valentina Santos's entire world to ashes. 3 years earlier, the Mercer family mansion sat on a hill in Los Feliz like a monument to everything Valentina would never have. 6 bedrooms. 4 bathrooms. A kitchen larger than her entire childhood home. And in a converted closet on the 3rd floor, barely wider than a bed, Valentina Santos lived in the margins of their lives. She woke at 5 in the morning, every morning, to the sound of her alarm clock vibrating against the concrete floor. No snooze. No rolling over. The Mercer children did not feed themselves. Sophie was 8. Marcus was 5. Their mother, Catherine, had perfected the art of beautiful absence, her days consumed by charity galas and Instagram photographs of herself holding poor children who were not her own. Valentina's hands shook as she pulled on the black uniform Catherine had provided. Hand-me-down from the previous nanny, a woman who had lasted 8 months before breaking down crying in the pantry. The seams were splitting at the armpits. A stain on the collar would not come out. But this was what she owned. This and $17 in a sock hidden beneath the radiator. She moved through the kitchen in the grey pre-dawn light. Made Sophie's lunch. Made Marcus's breakfast. Cut the crusts from his sandwich the way Catherine insisted, even though Marcus had never said he wanted them removed. The waste felt like violence every single time. Downstairs, Catherine emerged in a silk robe that cost more than Valentina's monthly salary. She did not look at Valentina directly. She never did. Instead, she spoke to the space beside her, as if addressing an empty room. The children need to be bathed and dressed by 7. Sophie has her tutoring appointment at 3. Do not let Marcus watch television. And Valentina, try not to let them become too attached to you. The last nanny was too familiar. It is confusing for them. Valentina nodded. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. Yes, Mrs. Mercer. Catherine turned away. The silk robe caught the light as she disappeared down the hallway. Valentina stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the house settle around her like a tomb. 14-hour days. 6 days a week. $300 per week cash, no paperwork, no rights, no way out. She had taken this job because the alternative was sleeping in her car. She had endured it for 3 years because the alternative was starving. The Mercer children had learned to find her in the dark hallways at night, small fingers wrapping around her wrist. They had learned to sit close to her on the worn couch while she read them stories. They had learned, despite Catherine's warnings, to love her. This was the problem. This was always the problem. Thursday evening came with no warning at all. Valentina had just put Marcus to bed, his small hand clutching hers as sleep dragged him under. She was undressing for the night when her phone buzzed. A message from a number she had not heard from in 3 months. It was Anthony Marchetti. They had dated for 11 months before he showed her exactly what his love looked like. It had started small, checking her phone, demanding to know where she went, insisting that what he did was only because he cared about her. By month 9, he was hitting her in places that would not bruise where anyone could see. By month 11, she had run away with nothing but the prayer card her grandmother had given her. That was 2 years ago. His message was simple, I miss you, baby. Can we talk? She deleted it. Her hands were shaking. 20 minutes later, the fire started in the apartment building across from where she lived. That was what she would tell the police, eventually. She had smelled smoke. She had gotten out. She had not realized until she was standing on the street in her pajamas that Anthony was no longer trying to call her. He was trying to burn her alive. The flames rose like a blade through the darkness. Valentina ran toward the building instead of away from it. She had left her prayer card inside. The only thing she had from her grandmother. The only proof that she had been loved by someone, somewhere, somehow. She made it up the stairs before the smoke became too thick. She made it to her room. She grabbed the card and ran. The building came down 14 minutes later. By dawn, she had nothing. No apartment. No job. No way to explain to the Mercer family why she had not come to work. No money except for the $17 in that sock. No one to call. No one who would answer if she did. She walked through downtown Los Angeles with her life stuffed into a plastic bag from the grocery store. The prayer card tucked into her pocket. The clothes on her back. The bruises from Anthony already turning colors that no foundation could hide. That was when she saw him. A small boy, no more than 7 years old, sitting outside a shelter with a Superman t-shirt and eyes that had already learned how to disappear. He was eating something from the trash can. He looked like he had not eaten in days. He looked like he had learned not to cry. She sat down beside him on the concrete. "What is your name?" He did not answer at first. Then, very quietly, Noah. She had $17 to her name. She used 5 of them to buy him a sandwich from the bodega. She used 2 more to buy him clean socks. She had $12 left. She held his hand and walked with him through the city, not knowing that somewhere in a mansion on a hill, a woman was posting photographs of Valentina's departure on Instagram. Not knowing that Anthony Marchetti was searching the city with corrupt police at his back. Not knowing that in an upscale restaurant downtown, a man named Noah Moreno was about to check his security cameras and see her. The night was hot enough to taste. The humidity pressed down like a fist. Noah's hand was small and trusting in hers. The prayer card was in her pocket. She had $7 left. She did not know that her entire life was about to change. 3 months earlier, on a Tuesday morning before the sun broke over Pasadena, Valentina Santos woke in the dark to the sound of her alarm clock chirping at 5:30. The converted closet measured 6 feet by 8 feet, barely wide enough to stretch her arms without brushing both walls. A twin mattress lay flat on the floor, the white sheets faded to gray from 1,000 washings. Above her head, a single shelf held 3 paperback books with cracked spines, a ceramic mug she used to hold her toothbrush, and a small framed prayer card her grandmother had pressed into her hands 15 years ago in a language Valentina had since forgotten how to speak. She sat up slowly, careful not to hit the hanging rail where the Mercer family's overflow coats dripped from wire hangers like dead animals. The closet door opened directly into the kitchen. Through the crack, she could hear the house breathing around her, the refrigerator humming its mechanical prayer, the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the foyer that cost more than 3 months of her salary. Valentina pulled on her uniform, a gray house dress with the top button missing, and used a safety pin to hold it closed. She moved through the pre-dawn kitchen like a ghost, her movements practiced and silent. The Mercer house was still sleeping. Catherine Mercer, sharp-boned and surgically tight at 52, would not wake for another hour. Her husband Richard would not emerge from his study until 7. But the children had needs that did not wait for sunlight. Emma was 8, Lucas was 6, and Sophie had just turned 4, and they needed breakfast ready when their mother called them down, needed their uniforms pressed without a wrinkle, needed their shoes tied and their hair brushed and their lunch boxes packed with handwritten notes that Catherine would take credit for at parent-teacher conferences. That was the agreement. 14-hour days, 6 days a week, $2,400 per month with no health insurance and nowhere else to go. Valentina cracked 6 eggs into a mixing bowl and whispered to the quiet kitchen, "Good morning, my darlings." Though they were not hers, would never be hers, would forget her the moment she stopped being useful to the household. She beat the eggs methodically. The morning felt thick, the humidity pressing down on Los Angeles like a physical weight. Somewhere in this city, someone was having coffee without counting the cost. Somewhere, a woman was throwing away food she did not want to eat. Valentina beat the eggs until they turned pale yellow and tried not to think about the arithmetic of her own survival. $17 in a sock hidden under the mattress. A library card. A phone with a cracked screen and no plan. A grandmother's prayer card and 3 books and nothing else to show for 28 years of being alive. By 6 o'clock, the kitchen smelled like butter and toast. Emma appeared first, already dressed in her private school uniform, her dark hair braided perfectly because Valentina had braided it the night before and told her not to sleep on it crooked. "Good morning, Valentina," Emma said formally, as if Valentina were a piece of furniture that had learned to cook. Valentina set a plate of scrambled eggs and fruit in front of her. No response was required. The child did not ask her how she had slept, did not notice the dark circles under her eyes, did not understand that the woman who tied her shoes and plaited her hair and whispered bedtime stories was disappearing slowly from the inside out. Luca stumbled down at 6:20, still half asleep, and climbed into his chair without looking at Valentina. She tied his shoes the way he preferred, a double knot so tight it would stay all day. Sophie came last, at 6:45, and fell asleep in her breakfast. Valentina picked the 4-year-old up and carried her to the living room couch, letting her rest against her shoulder while the other children ate and Catherine's heels clicked past the kitchen doorway on their way to somewhere important. The volunteer work came on Thursday nights. Every week, on her one evening off, Valentina took the bus downtown to St. Michael's shelter. The walls there were painted a color meant to be cheerful, a yellow-green that instead looked like the inside of a bruise. She read to children who had no one, whose parents had lost them to addiction or violence or simple negligence, who had been in the system so long they had stopped asking if anyone was coming to find them. That was where she met Noah Moreno, though she did not know his last name, did not know that he belonged to someone, did not know that his absence was being measured in desperation on a hill above the city. He sat alone in the corner, a small boy with dark curls and a Superman t-shirt with a hole in the collar. 6 years old or 7, she could not quite tell. His eyes had already learned the art of invisibility. Valentina sat down beside him on the floor and asked what his name was. After a long silence, he whispered, "Noah." "Do you like stories, Noah?" He did not answer at first. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, the one where someone comes back for the lost kid. So Valentina read him every book about families that were not born but chosen, about homes that opened their doors in the dark, about lost children who stopped being invisible. The Thursday before everything burned, Noah asked her a question that cracked something open inside her chest. "Will you come back next week?" "Of course I will," she promised, pressing her lips to the top of his head. "I will always come back for you." She did not know that someone already had. That 1,200 miles away, a man with a scar running from his eye to his cheekbone had hired investigators to search for him. That in 3 months, she would understand the weight of that promise in a way that would remake her entire world. On the night of August 15th, Valentina returned to her studio apartment at 9:30. The space measured 14 feet by 16 feet total, a kitchenette, a bathroom with a shower head that wept water, a bed she had bought used from Craigslist. Rent was $1,100 a month. She had paid it on time every single month because that was what you did when you had nothing, when being late meant homelessness, when homelessness meant you could not volunteer at the shelter, could not read to Noah, could not be the one person in his life who kept her word. She smelled the gasoline before she understood what it meant. The realization came in fragments. The chemical sweetness hanging in the stale air. The faint glisten of liquid across her bedspread. The charred edge of something, a curtain, maybe, or a pillow. 1 second to understand. 1 second to run. 1 second to grab the prayer card and photograph from the shelf above her bed before the match caught and the world turned into orange and black and a roaring that swallowed everything. She crashed through the window onto the fire escape. The metal railing was burning under her palms. 3 stories below, the alley was dark and empty and indifferent. Firefighters arrived while her apartment turned into ash. They pulled her down from the stairs and wrapped her in a blanket and asked questions she could not answer because Anthony Marchetti had found her, and Anthony Marchetti did not leave witnesses alive to press charges. By 2 in the morning, Valentina stood in the street wearing borrowed clothes, a shirt with someone else's name on the tag, jeans held up with a donated belt. Her hands were wrapped in gauze. Her apartment was gone. Her clothes were gone. Her phone was gone. She had $17 in her pocket. A photograph of her grandmother. A prayer card so worn the edges crumbled between her fingers. She walked through the humid Los Angeles darkness toward the only place that had ever asked nothing of her except to keep showing up. By dawn, she was at St. Michael's shelter asking the exhausted director, "Can I take Noah for the day? Just to get him out of here." And when the director, overwhelmed and understaffed, nodded without asking questions, Valentina made a decision that would change everything. She would not abandon this child to a system that had failed them both. She took Noah's small hand in hers and he whispered, "You came back. You always come back." And she said, "I will always come back. Always." When Noah said quietly, as the morning heat rose off the concrete, "My dad used to take me to a restaurant with red booths, I remember garlic bread," Valentina looked at this child who had been abandoned and promised to rebuild his memory in kindness. She had $17 and a prayer card and borrowed clothes and nothing to lose. She walked with him through the August heat toward a place called Ross's, a restaurant with red vinyl booths and the smell of garlic bread rising like a prayer toward heaven. She did not know that inside those booths, a man was checking his security cameras on a humid night. She did not know that her entire life was about to splinter and reform into something unrecognizable. She only knew Noah's hand was small and trusting in hers, and that was enough. That was everything. The humid Los Angeles darkness swallows the street. It is 8 p.m. on a Thursday in August, the kind of heat that makes the air itself feel like something you have to push through. Valentina Santos pushes through the heavy front door of Ross's with Noah's small hand gripped in hers, and the blast of air conditioning hits her skin like salvation. The smell reaches her first, garlic and fresh basil and red wine turning lazy circles through the restaurant. Edison bulbs strung across exposed brick walls cast everything in soft amber light. White-clothed tables. Well-dressed diners speaking in low voices. Expensive leather. Polished silverware. She does not belong here. She knows this immediately. The hostess looks up from her stand, her eyes traveling down Valentina's borrowed jeans, too large, cinched with a donated belt, and the oversized blouse that hangs like a ghost of something worn by someone else. The hostess's mouth tightens almost imperceptibly. "Do you have a reservation?" Valentina's cheeks flush but her voice stays steady, shaped by 3 years of invisibility at the Mercer household. "No, but could we just sit at the bar? My son wanted to see the restaurant." The lie tastes like relief on her tongue. "My son." The words fit her mouth the way they never fit anywhere else. Because in every way that matters, she has been more his mother than the system ever was. The hostess hesitates, then waves them toward the bar with obvious reluctance, as if directing them to a place where they cannot damage anything valuable. Valentina lifts Noah onto the second bar stool from the left. He is 5 years old with dark hair that matches hers and eyes that have seen too much abandonment for someone so young. He swings his feet and whispers, "Red booths." "Like I remember." "Red booths," she echoes, and her throat tightens because this child who was forgotten is being remembered. His small hand finds hers beneath the bar. The bartender approaches. His name is Marco and he has worked for the Moreno family for 20 years, and the moment his eyes land on Noah's face, his hand trembles. It is only slight, a millimeter of movement, but it is there. The bone structure. The dark eyes. The exact shape of a mouth he has seen 1,000 times in the man who sits upstairs in the corner office. That is the boy. That is the Moreno kid. Marco's eyes flick toward the corner booth where Tony stands guard in a charcoal suit, and in that glance is an entire conversation. Tony's jaw clenches. His hand moves toward his pocket where his phone waits like a weapon. Within 90 seconds, the information will travel upstairs. Within 3 minutes, Dante Moreno will be staring at security camera feed with tears streaming down his face. But Valentina notices none of this. Her entire world has narrowed to Noah and the menu and making him laugh by pretending a breadstick is a magic wand. She asks what sounds good. She explains items with patient detail. She is someone who has spent 1,000 invisible hours caring for children who were not hers, and that muscle memory moves through her like water finding its path. When she orders, she counts the money in her mind. $17. That is all. That is everything. She orders the only thing she can afford, a plate of spaghetti for them to share and 2 waters. Marco brings the food back. But he brings twice what she ordered. Extra meatballs. A side of garlic bread still steaming. A small tiramisu dusted with cocoa powder that catches the light. Valentina's eyes go wide with the shock of being given more than she asked for. "I can't," she starts. "On the house, miss." Marco's voice is steady, but something in his eyes is breaking. Because in the security footage now playing upstairs, he watches what Dante watches. He watches Valentina divide the pasta carefully so Noah gets the larger portion. He watches her dip a napkin in water to clean his face with the gentleness of someone who knows what it is to be forgotten. He watches her pull out the worn prayer card, so worn the edges crumble between her fingers, and show Noah the image of Saint Anthony printed in fading blue ink. "Patron saint of lost things," she tells him, and her voice shakes slightly. Sometimes lost things find their way home. Upstairs in his private office, Dante Moreno watches the security feed with the volume turned off. The camera is grainy and blue-tinted, but he can see everything. The way she touches Noah's shoulder without thinking about it. The way Noah leans into her like she is safety itself. The way she gives him her complete attention as if he is the only child in the world who matters. Dante has been a dead man for 2 years. He runs his empire with cold efficiency. He does not smile. He does not feel. He stopped feeling the day Maria was buried. But watching his son's face on this screen, watching this woman shield him from the world with nothing but her own broken hands, something shatters inside his chest. His vision blurs. Tears roll down his face without his permission. Tony stands frozen in the doorway. He has never seen this. In 15 years of serving Dante Moreno, he has never once witnessed him weep. Pietro moves in and closes the office door quietly, understanding that what is happening here is sacred and dangerous. When Valentina stands to leave, the prayer card trembles in her hand. She counts out $17 in crumpled bills and realizes with a sharp ache that it is not enough. Not for what she received. Not for the kindness. She hesitates, then leaves it all anyway because Marco was kind and she is someone who has learned to repay kindness even when she has nothing. She takes Noah's hand and walks toward the door. Dante is down the stairs in seconds. His expensive black suit moves like water. His polished shoes strike the marble floor with a sound that makes every diner turn. Waiters freeze mid-step. The restaurant goes quiet like a held breath. "Excuse me." Valentina's hand is on the door handle. She turns. Dante Moreno stands 3 feet away, and up close she can see the tear tracks still wet on his face. His jaw works like he is trying to form words that do not exist. His eyes are reddened. His gaze moves from her to Noah and something breaks in his expression all over again. His mouth trembles, his eyes glisten, his entire body goes rigid with the force of it. "This is my son," he says, and his voice comes out rough like it has been dragged through gravel. The words hang in the humid air like a physical thing. Valentina's hand tightens on Noah's reflexively. Protective. Not understanding. She runs through possibilities in her mind, but none of them fit. The missing poster she saw at the shelter months ago had a different last name. Noah's mother had changed it during her addiction spiral. The pieces click together and suddenly she understands what she has walked into. Noah stares at the man with the expression of someone trying to remember a dream from childhood. Dante kneels down slowly, his hands shaking. He whispers, "Noah. I've been looking for you for 6 months, buddy. I never stopped looking." And Noah's eyes go wide with recognition. His small voice cracks, "Dad." The restaurant has gone completely silent. Every diner frozen. Every fork down. Every breath held. Dante stands and looks at Valentina and his voice breaks into pieces. "You saved him. You kept him safe." She does not know what to say. Words fail her. She is nobody, a nanny with $17 and no home and a prayer card that fell apart the moment anyone actually looked at her. Standing before a man whose suit probably costs more than she makes in 6 months. A man whose name makes people whisper and cross streets. But Dante is looking at her like she hung the moon and moved mountains, tears still streaming down his face, and he says the words that will change everything. Please don't go. Let me explain. Let me thank you. Let me know the name of the woman who gave me back my son. Valentina whispers her name. Dante repeats it like a prayer. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away in a dive bar on East LA streets, Anthony Mucchetti stares at his phone while 2 corrupt lapped officers lean against the bar beside him. Officer Briggs. Officer Santos. Both of them owe him favors. Both of them know how to make inconvenient people inconvenient. Anthony slams his beer down hard enough that foam splatters across the bar. That bitch survived. Officer Briggs shifts his weight. Why do you even care, man? Let her go. She's gone. Let it stay that way. Anthony's face twists with possessive rage that makes his jaw ugly. She's mine. She doesn't get to leave me. She doesn't get to disappear and play savior and pretend I don't exist. He pulls out his phone and shows them a photo of Valentina from 2 years ago, smiling slightly, her guard down for just a moment before she learned to fear him. Before she learned to disappear. I want her found, Anthony says. I want her scared. I want her to know she can't run from me. I want her to understand that what is mine stays mine. Officer Santos, corrupt down to his bone marrow, nods. We'll put out a missing person report. Get access to the shelter system. Trace her movements. Anthony grins. When you find her, you call me first. Not the station. Not your sergeant. Me. And in a Pasadena kitchen, Catherine Mercer stands in yoga pants and a silk robe, staring at the empty closet where Valentina should be. Her 3 children are not dressed. Breakfast is not made. Lunches are not packed. Emma asks from the kitchen counter, "Where's Valentina?" Catherine's face flushes. She calls Valentina's phone, disconnected. Burned in the fire. She calls St. Michael's shelter and speaks to a director who is too tired to lie effectively. Yes, Valentina came by yesterday and left with a child. Catherine's voice goes ice cold. She abandoned her post to play with shelter kids. Her friend Rebecca sits at the kitchen island with expensive coffee. You should report her. Say she stole something. Make it believable. Catherine's eyes narrow to slits. Better. I'll make sure she never works in this city again. I know people on every private school board. Every nanny agency. Every placement service. By Monday, her name will be radioactive. No one will hire her. No one will even consider it. She smiles, and the smile is the smile of someone whose cruelty is always dressed in the language of property and loss of value. The smile of someone who has never been told no. Later that same Friday morning, Valentina wakes in an actual bedroom with morning light spilling through clean windows. Noah sleeps in the second bedroom, both of them wearing donated clothes from a 24-hour store that Tony picked up at 1 a.m. She walks through the furnished apartment in something like a dream state. Real furniture. A full kitchen. A bathroom with hot water that runs without sputtering. Clean towels. A shower that is not a sink bath in a dark corner. When she understands that this is hers, this space, this light, this safety, she sits on the edge of the bed and starts to cry because she has not had her own room in 3 years. Because her entire life has been lived in the spaces between other people's lives. Dante arrives at 9 a.m. with Tony carrying bags of breakfast. Dante sits at her kitchen table and lays out his offer with the precision of a man used to negotiation. I will cover your living expenses while you rebuild, he says. No strings. No obligation. My lawyer is already working on getting Noah legally placed with me. It will take weeks of court hearings, but he is my biological son and I have resources. In the meantime, you are welcome to stay with him. To be the stable presence he knows. Valentina nods slowly, but something in her resists. I need to find work. I can't just accept. Then work for me, Dante says. I need someone I trust with Noah while this process happens. Someone who already knows him. Someone he feels safe with. $5,000 per month. Benefits. Actual hours. Actual days off. Actual respect. He leans forward, and his dark eyes are steady. This is not charity, Valentina. This is me hiring the best person for the job. She negotiates like someone used to being undervalued, finally standing up for herself. In writing. I need it in writing. I need to know this is real as not pity. Done, he says. Later that evening, they sit on her small apartment balcony in the humid August heat. The city spreads below them in a glittering map. Noah is asleep inside. The air is thick enough to taste. Her name was Maria, Dante says, and his voice goes hollow. She lived 3 days. Stillborn, technically alive, but her lungs never worked right. I held her while she died. He describes the nursery still sealed in his house, the crib untouched, the mobile still hanging above a mattress where no child will ever sleep again. After Maria died, I stopped feeling anything, he continues. I was a dead man walking. Until I saw you with Noah on that camera and something cracked open in my chest. Valentina reaches across the small space between their chairs and takes his hand. No words. Just contact. They sit like that while distant thunder rolls across Los Angeles like a warning. Then Tony appears on the balcony, his face grim. Boss, we have a problem. Anthony Mucchetti just filed a missing persons report on Valentina. He's got 2 cops helping him search. And Catherine Mercer made calls. She's telling everyone Valentina is unstable, dangerous, possibly kidnapped her children. They're both coming for her. The thunder rolls again, closer now. Real strength is not found in never falling but in always standing back up. The rain comes harder now, sheets of it hammering the pedestrian bridge like accusations. Valentina stands at the railing, her hands gripping cold metal, water streaming down her face so thick she cannot tell where rain ends and tears begin. Below, the freeway stretches dark and endless, brake lights blurring into rivers of red. She has been standing here for 15 minutes. Maybe 20. Time has stopped meaning anything. Her phone buzzes again. Then again. She does not look at it. The text from Noah sits in her pocket like a blade. Where are you? I had a bad dream. Can you read me the story about the lost kid who gets found? 7 years old and already he knows the weight of abandonment. Already he expects the people he loves to disappear. She closes her eyes and thinks about that converted closet in the Mercer house. 3 years of her body folded into 4 walls that were never meant to hold a person. 3 years of Catherine's voice dripping poison while Valentina scrubbed floors on her knees. And for what? For $17 in her pocket and a reputation that Catherine has spent the last 36 hours systematically destroying across every social platform in Los Angeles. The printed pages Pietro delivered sit in her mind like broken glass. Screenshots from Catherine's Instagram, comments spreading like infection. I worry about Valentina's mental stability. She became obsessed with my children in an unhealthy way. I'm praying she gets the help she needs. Each sentence wrapped in the language of concern, each lie designed to sound like truth spoken by someone who cares. And Anthony's missing persons report. His face on the news. His voice shaking with what he calls fear but which is really rage, the rage of a man who has never been told no by anyone he could not break. Valentina's hands shake against the railing. Not from cold. From the weight of knowing that she has brought this. All of it. She brought danger to Noah. She brought chaos to Dante. She brought her poison into a life that was finally becoming safe. The freeway hums below her, indifferent to her falling. Maybe Anthony is right about her. Maybe Catherine saw something true beneath the surface, something broken, something dangerous, something that contaminates everything it touches. Her grandmother used to say that broken things can be mended, but some breaks go too deep. Some breaks are the kind that follow you forever, and the only mercy is knowing when to let go. She thinks about letting go now. How simple it would be. How much simpler than fighting two people who have all the power and all the connections and all the money to make her disappear. The rain pounds. Her breathing comes in gasps. She reaches into her pocket for the worn prayer card, the only thing from her grandmother she still carries, and her hand brushes her phone. The screen glows with another message. This time it is from Dante, "Where are you?" And then another, "Tony saw you leave on the security camera. I am coming to get you. Send location." She does not send location. But she does not jump. Valentina straightens her spine one vertebra at a time. She pulls her hand back from the railing. Her voice comes out raw and broken. "I am done. I am done running. I am done letting them win." She walks back through the rain, water streaming from borrowed clothes, and when she pushes open the apartment door, Dante is standing inside the living room like a storm made flesh. His dark eyes scan her from head to foot, checking for damage, and something in his face cracks when he sees her alive. He moves toward her. "Where the hell were you?" Her voice is steady now, "Somewhere I should not have been. But not anymore. Whatever comes next, I stand and fight." Dante's expression shifts to something fierce and protective. "Then we end this. Both of them. Tonight." He does not give her time to ask what he means. He is already on his phone, already moving, already calling names and making arrangements that Valentina realizes, with a clarity that burns through her fear, are going to reshape the landscape of her survival. At 5 a.m. Monday morning, Anthony Marchetti is still in his apartment when the sound comes. A boom. The door explodes inward like the apartment itself has rejected him. 6 federal agents in tactical gear flood inside, weapons raised, and Anthony lunges for the knife on his nightstand, but they are faster. They take him down hard, face pressed against the tile floor until his cheekbone cracks, hands zip-tied so tight the plastic bites into his wrists. He screams, "You can't do this. I have cop friends. I have connections." The lead agent's voice is flat, "Your cop friends are in custody. Officers Briggs and Santos are already at the federal building. You're being charged with arson, attempted murder, stalking, assault, and conspiracy. You're done." They drag him out in handcuffs, screaming Valentina's name so loud his voice tears, his face red and contorted with the rage of a man who has finally met something he cannot control. His neighbors watch from doorways as he is shoved into a black SUV. News cameras are already positioned on the street because Dante made sure the media knew a major corruption bust was happening. Within 3 hours, the story breaks, lapped officers arrested in corruption scandal. Federal prosecutors move forward with charges. Anthony Marchetti's bail hearing is set for Wednesday. The prosecutor later tells Valentina, her voice steady and sure, 40 years minimum. No parole. The fire alone makes it attempted murder. But Anthony's destruction is almost merciful compared to what happens to Catherine Mercer. Tuesday morning, the Los Angeles Times runs a story that spreads like wildfire across social media within hours. Pasadena's wealthy families accused of labor exploitation. Catherine's photo is front and center. The article details 3 years of subminimum wage pay, housing in what the building inspector describes as a safety hazard, no benefits, no overtime, no actual employee classification. The journalist names 12 other families in Catherine's social circle who employ live-in help under identical conditions. The story becomes systemic. The story becomes scandal. Catherine does not understand at first that she is finished. She arrives at the Pasadena Country Club Wednesday morning for her weekly charity breakfast, expecting sympathy for her victimhood narrative. The room goes cold the moment she walks in. Women who have been her friends for 15 years turn away. Their movements are synchronized, deliberate, a kind of social erasure. One woman confronts her directly, her voice quiet and final, "You exploited that girl for 3 years. Then you tried to destroy her when she left. I have been thinking about my own household staff, and I am ashamed. My lawyer says we could all face liability. I'm rehiring everyone properly and paying back wages." Another adds, the IRS opened an audit of your family's finances. Your foundation contributions are being reviewed. You should probably call a tax attorney. Catherine tries to defend herself, but her voice sounds hollow. She is escorted out of the club by management. By Thursday, her husband files for divorce. By Friday, the Mercer house is listed for sale. Catherine becomes the story wealthy women whisper about with a kind of horrified fascination. Did you hear about Catherine Mercer? Thought she was untouchable. Thought her money and her position made her safe. One whistleblower and she lost it all. The systematic social destruction is more devastating than any physical punishment because it strips away the power structure Catherine spent decades building. The power she wielded like a weapon against invisible women in converted closets. Wednesday night, Valentina stands in Dante's restaurant watching the news coverage on the television mounted in the corner. Catherine's face flashes across the screen, a mugshot from her financial audit, then photos of the Mercer house with a sold sign planted in the lawn. Anthony's name appears in smaller text, Federal Holding Facility. Dante stands beside her, close enough that she can feel the heat from his body. His voice is quiet. You're safe now. Both of them are gone. They can never touch you again. Tony mutters to Pietro in the background, thinking no one can hear. The boss just burned down half the city for her? He would do it again. He would burn it all down and build it back up just to keep her safe. Pietro nods slowly, understanding something ancient and true about loyalty, about what it means when a man finally finds someone worth breaking his codes for. Valentina does not hear them. She is watching the news scroll her name, not as a victim or a liar, but as a survivor. The woman who was brave enough to save a child. The woman who was strong enough to stand back up. And in that moment, standing beside the man who chose to protect her, she finally believes it might be true. 2 months had passed since the flames went out and the silence settled over Los Angeles like a mercy. October air moved cool across the city, carrying the scent of change, and Valentina Santos stood in a small office on the 3rd floor of the family court building with papers in her trembling hands. Legal guardianship of Noah Moreno. The word swam in front of her eyes, real and impossible, and hers. The judge, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, smiled from across her desk. This child is lucky to have both of you, she said, glancing at Dante where he sat in the chair beside Valentina's, his dark suit pressed sharp as a blade, his hand resting on his thigh where their fingers could almost touch. The stability you can provide, the commitment, it's clear Noah feels safe with you both. Safe. The word meant something different now. Valentina signed her name on the last document, Valentina Santos, and the pen felt weightless in her hands, like signing something into existence that had always been true but needed official acknowledgement to become real. When she finished, Dante reached over and squeezed her hand. In his eyes was something she could not quite name yet, something patient and fierce and waiting. They picked Noah up from school that afternoon, and he climbed into the back seat of Dante's black car with his backpack and his folder of artwork, chattering about the science project on water cycles. He did not understand the magnitude of the morning. He only knew that Valentina was there, that she would be there tomorrow, that her presence had become as reliable as gravity. He climbed between them at a red light and wrapped his arms around Valentina's neck. "Did you get the thing?" he asked. "The paper that says I'm yours?" Valentina's eyes filled. She smoothed his hair back from his small forehead. "I did, buddy. We did. So you can't leave." "I cannot leave," she promised. "Not ever." Dante pulled into the parking lot of Los Angeles Community College at 7 that evening, parking in the faculty section with the casual authority of a man accustomed to being accommodated. Valentina gathered her notebook and her pencil case, purchased with her own money from her first paycheck, a small act of ownership, and looked at Dante with something like apology. "I'll be back by 10, she said. "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "Your professor sent me an email." Valentina froze. "What?" "Said you turned in an essay on childhood trauma and resilience. Said it was exceptional. Asked if you considered graduate school." Dante's voice was steady, factual, but his eyes held hers. She said, "You have important perspectives." Valentina could not speak. Graduate school belonged to people like Catherine Mercer's friends, people who had time and money and the assumption that the world would make space for them. Not people who had slept in closets and stood in the ashes of their own apartment 3 months ago. "You could do it," Dante said. It was not a suggestion. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the same certainty he used to command his men. "I would make sure of it." She went to class. She sat in the lecture hall between a medical student and a paralegal, took notes on theories of resilience and trauma recovery, and something inside her, some small seed that had nearly died in the flames, began to grow again. When the professor returned her essay with an A+ and the handwritten note about graduate school, Valentina folded it carefully and carried it home like a prayer card. By the first week of October, her life had begun to take shape in ways that were quiet and unremarkable and devastating in their ordinariness. She had an apartment on the 3rd floor of a building in Silver Lake with windows that opened onto a fire escape where she had planted herbs in small pots, basil and mint and cilantro that grew in the California sun. She bought them herself. She chose the pots herself. She watered them every morning before her shifts at the restaurant, and sometimes Noah would help, his small hands gentle on the green stems. She had opened a bank account. She had $3,847 in savings, money she had earned with her own labor, money that belonged to her alone. She would not touch it. She was saving it for something, though she could not yet name what. The future. The unforeseen catastrophe. The thing that might still come to take it all away. The old panic still lived in her chest, quieter now but not gone, always waiting. Dante paid her fairly now, not as a nanny but as a household manager and caregiver, a position that had a title and a salary and benefits. Her name was on contracts. She was a person with legal standing, documented in the system that had once tried to erase her. One night in the 2nd week of October, Valentina sat at her kitchen table helping Noah with homework. The table was small and the apartment was small and everything about it was exactly right. Noah was struggling with addition, moving small counters around to make sense of the numbers, and he looked up at her with his dark eyes, Dante's eyes, and said, "Can I call you Tia Val?" "Like Aunt Val." Valentina's hands went still. "Tia. The word for family." "I would love that, buddy," she managed, and her eyes flooded so fast that the numbers on the page blurred into watercolor. Noah did not understand why she was crying. He only understood that she was happy, so he climbed into her lap the way he did sometimes, his small body settling against hers like he had always belonged there. They sat together at the kitchen table in the apartment she had earned, and Valentina held this child who was not her blood but had become her reason, and she understood that love was not something you inherited, it was something you built, piece by piece, moment by moment, choice by choice. 3 days later, Valentina sat at the head of a conference table in a law office downtown, her back straight, her voice steady. Around her sat 3 other women, Gloria, who had worked for Catherine for 8 years, Margot, who had lived in a converted laundry closet for 12, and Rebecca, who still bore the physical marks of the abuse they had suffered. They were filing a labor rights suit against Catherine Mercer and her entire social circle. Valentina's testimony would be one of her that would eventually change employment laws in California, establishing protections for live-in domestic workers that had never existed before. "They treated us like we weren't human," Valentina said to the lawyer, a woman named Sandra who had listened to her story with the focused intensity of someone gathering evidence. "They didn't see us. We were invisible. That invisibility was part of the cruelty. It let them act like what they did didn't matter because we didn't matter. But we did. We do." The lawyer wrote everything down. "This will be difficult," she said. "They will try to discredit you." "They already did," Valentina replied. "And I'm still here. I'm still speaking. Let them try again." By the end of the 2nd week of October, Valentina walked into Dante's restaurant at 6 in the evening, not through the kitchen entrance where she had first been employed, but through the front door, dressed in a new dress that she had chosen and purchased with her own money. It was deep blue, the color of the evening sky before stars, and it fit her like she was allowed to take up space in the world. Dante stood at the bar with Tony and Pietro, and when he saw her, something shifted in his face, a softening, a recognition, a hunger that was not about power or protection but about want. He wore a black suit, open white shirt, silver cufflinks. His dark hair was brushed back from his face. The scar that ran from his eye to his cheekbone caught the light, and Valentina found herself looking at it the way she looked at everything about him now, not as a mark of violence but as evidence that he had survived his own catastrophes and come out the other side still capable of gentleness. "You're early," he said. "I wanted to be," she replied, and something unspoken passed between them. They sat at a regular table on the restaurant floor, not in the private booth where he conducted business. Noah was between them, his paper placemat covered in crayon art, purple dinosaurs and yellow suns and stick figures that might have been people or might have been dreams. Dante ordered Noah's favorite pasta. Valentina ordered eggplant parmesan. They ate like a normal family, and no one at any other table knew that 6 weeks ago, Valentina had been standing in an apartment consumed by fire, believing her life was over. The conversation was easy now, full of small jokes. Dante told her about a supplier who had tried to negotiate with him, and Valentina laughed so hard she had to set down her fork. Noah showed them a drawing from school and explained in detail the scientific reasoning behind his rendering of the water cycle, and Dante listened the way he listened to everything now, with complete attention, like the child's words were the most important information in the world. When Noah went to the bathroom, Valentina looked across the table at Dante and saw him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The air between them had changed over the past 2 months, charged with everything they had not yet said. He reached across the table and his hand covered hers, and they sat like that for several seconds, the touch both innocent and profound. "I'm falling in love with you," Dante said quietly. The words hung between them like a confession. Valentina's heart stumbled. Before she could respond, Tony appeared at his elbow. "Boss, we need to talk about the new shipment from the port," Tony said, his voice carefully neutral, his eyes deliberately not seeing anything. The moment fractured. Dante withdrew his hand, but his eyes held hers for one more second, a promise, a question, a beginning. 1 week later, Valentina visited her grandmother's grave for the first time since the fire. The cemetery was quiet, the October sun filtered through the California oak trees in shafts of gold. She carried a single flower and the worn prayer card that had survived the flames, now laminated and protected behind clear plastic by Dante, who had taken it to a print shop without asking why it mattered so much. She knelt beside the headstone with her grandmother's name carved into stone that was weathered by years and rain and the relentless sun. The prayer card trembled in her hands. "I stood back up, Abuela," she whispered. "Just like you taught me. I fell so hard I thought I would shatter, but I stood back up. And when I did, someone was there. I think you would have liked him. I think you already do, from wherever you are." She placed the protected prayer card against the headstone and sat there for a long time, feeling the weight of survival, the strange grace of having lived through something that should have killed her. Late October evening. Dante's penthouse overlooking Los Angeles, the city lights stretched below like captured stars. Valentina and Dante stood on the balcony, the November air cool against their skin. Noah was asleep upstairs in the room that was officially his now, with his name on the door and everything inside chosen with his happiness in mind. Dante's arm was around her shoulders. She was fitting into the space against his side like she had always belonged there. "You know you don't have to work for me anymore," Dante said. "The custody is settled. You're free to do anything. Go back to school full-time, work anywhere. You've earned your freedom." Valentina was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to face him, and there was no fear in her eyes anymore, only certainty. "What if I don't want to go anywhere?" she said. "What if I like exactly where I am?" Dante's hand rose to her face. His fingers traced the line of her cheekbone with a gentleness that made her entire body ache. "Valentina," he said, and his voice was rough, "I need to tell you something I've been holding back. I can't hold it anymore." Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. The voice on the other end was poison wrapped in rage. You destroyed my life, Catherine Mercer hissed from a cheap cell phone, her voice shaking with fury. You took everything from me. I will make you pay for this. I will find a way to hurt you the way you hurt me. Valentina's response was ice. You destroyed your own life by treating people like property. And you have no power left to hurt me anymore. Lose this number. She hung up and turned back to Dante, who was already texting Tony. But she placed her hand on his phone. She can't touch me, Valentina said. Neither of them can. I'm not afraid anymore. The realization of it, the truth of it, settled over her like a benediction. What were you going to tell me? She asked. Dante pulled her close. His arms wrapped around her, and she could feel his heartbeat against her chest, solid and alive and real. That I'm falling in love with you, he said. That when I saw you on that security camera with my son, something dead in me came back to life. That every day I watch you stand back up from everything that tried to break you, and I'm in awe. That I need you to choose me, and not because you owe me, but because you want to. Valentina rose on her toes and kissed him, and it was not desperate or frantic. It was certain. It was home. How did this story make you feel? Please leave a comment below and share what is in your heart. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. Share this with someone who needs to hear it.